The dawn of Selma's day. The sun had barely crested the jagged peaks of the mountains when Selma stirred awake in her small, weed-woven home. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and maize from the nearby fields. It was another day in her village, nestled in the heart of the Aztec world, hundreds of years ago, where life pulsed in rhythm with the seasons, the gods, and the unyielding demands of survival. Selma, barely 13, was no stranger to the weight of responsibility. Her name, whispered by her mother to mean blessed by the sun, felt like both a promise and a burden in a world where the sun's favor was never guaranteed. Selma's village, a cluster of mud and thatch homes surrounded by terraced fields, was home to a few hundred souls. They were farmers, weavers, and worshippers, bound by tradition and the ever-present need to appease the gods. Her family, her mother Maria and her younger brother Arthur, relied on her to help keep the household alive. As she rose from her woven mat, the faint crackle of the hearth fire greeted her. Maria was already up, grinding maize on the metate, her hands moving with the steady rhythm of years spent coaxing life from grain. "Selma, the water," Maria said without looking up, her voice soft but firm. The day had begun. Selma grabbed the clay jug, its surface etched with swirling patterns, and slipped on her sandals. The path to the stream was familiar, worn smooth by countless trips. The village was stirring now, women heading to the fields, men sharpening obsidian tools, children chasing each other through the dust. The air buzzed with the chatter of Nahuatl, the language of her people, and the distant crow of a turkey. Selma's bare arms prickled in the morning chill, but she moved quickly, knowing the jug's weight would soon warm her. The stream was a lifeline, its clear waters fed by the mountains. Selma knelt at its edge, filling the jug while scanning the banks for edible herbs. Survival meant noticing everything: cattail roots for flour, watercress for stews. She tucked a few sprigs of epazote into her waistband, their sharp scent clinging to her fingers. As she hoisted the jug onto her shoulder, a rustle in the reeds made her freeze. Jaguars were rare, but not impossible, and bandits from rival villages sometimes prowled. Her heart thumped, but it was only a heron, its wings slicing the air as it took flight. Selma exhaled, chastising herself for her fear. She couldn't afford to be careless. Back at the house, she poured the water into a larger vessel and joined her mother at the hearth. Breakfast was simple: maize porridge mixed with chia seeds, eaten with fingers from a shared bowl. Arthur, only 7, complained it was too plain, but Selma shot him a look. "Eat, or you'll have no strength for the fields," she said. He pouted, but obeyed. Food was never guaranteed, not with the rains so unpredictable this year. The gods, it seemed, were testing them. After eating, Selma's day unfolded into a series of tasks, each a thread in the delicate weave of survival. She and Maria worked the milpa, their small plot of maize, beans, and squash. The soil was stubborn, baked hard by the sun, and Selma's hands ached as she wielded the digging stick. Weeds choked the young maize stalks, and she yanked them out with a fierceness that belied her slight frame. The work was backbreaking, but the milpa was their lifeblood. A poor harvest could mean hunger, or worse, the need to offer more to the gods to restore their favor. As they worked, Maria sang softly, a hymn to Tlaloc, the rain god. Selma joined in, her voice quieter, less certain. She wanted to believe the gods listened, but last year's drought had shaken her faith. The priests had demanded extra offerings: turkeys, jade, even blood from the village's strongest men. But the rains had come too late. Selma's cousin, Xochitl, had fallen ill during the lean months, her body wasting away until she was only a shadow. The memory sat heavy in Selma's chest, a reminder of what failure could cost. By midday, the sun was a relentless weight. Selma's hupil, a simple cotton tunic, clung to her sweat-soaked skin. She and Maria paused to drink from a gourd, the water warm but soothing. Arthur joined them, his hands stained with the sap of maguey plants he'd been harvesting for pulque, a fermented drink the village used in rituals and trade. "The soil's too dry," he said, squinting at the sky. "We need rain by the next moon." Or, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. The afternoon brought a different challenge: weaving. Selma sat with Maria under the shade of a ceiba tree, their fingers dancing over the backstrap loom. They were making a new cloak for Arthur, his old one too small. The cotton threads were coarse, dyed with cochineal red and indigo blue, and Selma struggled to keep the pattern tight. "Patience," Maria murmured, her own hands deft and sure. Weaving was not just craft, but currency cloth could be traded for tools, salt, or cacao. Selma's clumsy efforts frustrated her, but she pressed on. Every mistake was a lesson, every row a step toward providing for her family. As the sun dipped, the village gathered for the evening meal. Selma helped prepare tamales, wrapping maize dough and beans in corn husks to steam over the fire. The women shared stories, their laughter a brief reprieve from the day's toil. But the mood shifted when the talk turned to the upcoming festival for Huitzilopochtli, the war god. The priests had been clear. The gods were angry, and a greater sacrifice might be needed. Selma's stomach twisted. She'd seen the ritual's captives from rival tribes, their hearts offered to the sun. She didn't want to think about it, but the fear lingered, sharp as obsidian. Night fell, and the village grew quiet. Selma lay on her mat, listening to Arthur's soft snores and the distant howl of a coyote. Sleep was elusive, her mind churning with the day's worries. Would the rains come? Would the maize ripen? Would the gods demand more than they could give? She touched the small amulet around her neck, a carved stone in the shape of a sun, and whispered a prayer to Toneshu, the sun god her name honored. "Keep us safe," she murmured, hoping he was listening. The weight of challenges. Selma's life was a delicate balance, each day a negotiation with the land, the gods, and her own limits. The challenges she faced were not just physical, but existential, woven into the fabric of her world. One of the greatest was the unpredictability of nature. The rains, controlled by Tlaloc, were fickle. Too little, and the crops withered. Too much, and floods could sweep away the milpa. Selma had learned to read the sky clouds that promised but didn't deliver, winds that carried the scent of rain but brought only dust. Every morning she scanned the horizon, her heart a mix of hope and dread. Hunger was a constant shadow. The village stored maize and beans in clay granaries, but last year's poor harvest had depleted their reserves. Selma's family ate sparingly, rationing every kernel. She'd seen her parents skip meals to ensure Arthur had enough, their faces gaunt but resolute. Selma felt the same instinct, often slipping her share to her brother when he wasn't looking. The guilt of hunger was hers to bear, but so was the love that drove it. Disease was another specter. The village healer, an old woman named Malinal, used herbs and chants to ward off illness, but her powers were limited. When fevers swept through, as they had with Xochitl, no one was spared the grief. Selma feared for Arthur, whose small body seemed too fragile for the world's harshness. She helped Malinal gather medicinal plants episode for stomach pains, copal resin for rituals, but the fear of losing someone else gnawed at her. The gods themselves were a challenge. The priests taught that every aspect of life, rain, harvest, health, depended on their favor. Selma participated in the rituals, offering maize or feathers at the village's small temple, but the demands were growing. The priests spoke of blood debts, of sacrifices to ensure the sun's return. Selma didn't understand why the gods needed so much, but questioning them felt dangerous. She saw the fear in her parents' eyes when the priests passed through, their obsidian knives glinting in the firelight. Social pressures added another layer. As a girl, Selma was expected to master the skills of womanhood grinding maize, weaving, cooking, while also contributing to the fields. Her mother was patient, but firm. knowing Selma's competence would determine her future. Marriage was a distant thought, but already the village women whispered about matches, judging girls by their skill and diligence. Selma felt the weight of their eyes, knowing a single misstep could mark her as unfit. Yet amidst these challenges, Selma found moments of resilience. She learned to coax life from the stubborn earth, to weave patterns that earned her mother's rare smile. She taught Arthur to spot edible plants, turning survival into a game to ease his fears. She listened to the elders' stories of the gods, searching for meaning in their tales. And she dreamed of a world where the rains came on time, where her family was safe, where her name's promise felt true. A life in balance. By the time the moon rose, Selma's body ached, but her spirit held firm. She was a daughter of the sun, shaped by the land and the gods' whims. Her days were a cycle of labor and hope, each task a prayer for survival. The challenges were many: hunger, drought, disease, the gods' unyielding demands, but so were the small victories. A full jug of water, a tight row of weaving, a laugh shared with Arthur, these were her anchors. As she drifted toward sleep, the amulet warm against her skin, Selma thought of the festival to come. She didn't know what the gods would ask, but she knew she'd deface it with the same quiet strength that carried her through each day. In her village, thousands of years ago, survival was not just a task, but a story, and Selma was writing hers, one dawn at a time.